Yeah, so actually I quite like the new soundtrack for Space Jam 2. No, it's not as amazing as the original soundtrack, but it's just like the original Space Jam. It's not as good, but it's still good. Now the Looney Tunes finally land back on their old home planet. Frickin' Marvin gets crushed by his door. Then you get to see the Looney Tunes in their old school uniform, their old school jerseys from the original Space Jam, which was amazing to see it. But really, like seriously, like right after Marvin got crushed by the door, when they're practicing, Marvin should have showed up. He's all wrangled or whatever. He's got his gun, and he threatens the Tunes, and then Bugs or the rest of them, like LeBron, they're like, "Well, listen, Marvin, we're sorry about all that stuff, but we need your help." And then he joins the Toon Squad, because even though Marvin is an alien, like this film is trying to convince you that Marvin is not a Looney Tune, which is pig shit. Marvin the Martian is a fucking Looney Tune. Marvin's definitely a Looney Tune, and if they had him join the Toon Squad there, it would have been cool because the only reason Marvin would have joined them was because he knows that the Looney Tune world is now threatened. And he's a Looney Tune, so the Looney Tune world is part of him. Even though he doesn't live there, he's got his UFO, he still visits the Toon world a lot. So the Toon world should be important to him because he wants to rule the Toon world. He wants to claim it in the name of Mars and all that stuff. So he doesn't want the Goon Squad or Algae Rhythm to take over Toon World. So him joining the Toon Squad would be like, he'd be forced to do that for his own ambitions. So it would have been awesome. Like, that's a golden opportunity for Marvin to join. And then we would have gotten to see way more of Marvin in glorious 3D later on. And it's a damn shame we only got to see like a second of him in 3D because his helmet looked so amazing. Oh, there's one more thing I want to mention about them. The Looney Tunes getting picked up on all the planets. The Looney Tunes all got separated by Algae Rhythm because he convinced them to leave one another. When they were rescued by LeBron and Bugs with Marvin's UFO on each planet, there should have been scenes where Elmer says he misses Bugs, or Taz, or Sylvester, all these other characters. Foghorn Leghorn, they all should have talked to each other when they were taken back to the UFO. They all should have had scenes where they convinced them, hey, it's time to come back to Toon World. Like, we're special. We belong together because we're a family. And they don't do any of that. They just pick them up on their ship and they just take off. Like, wait a minute. The whole point of you guys taking them away is because Bugs feels lonely without them, because he misses them, because he loves them. How come they don't show that? They don't, like, say that to one another when they all get picked up by the ship. And I get that there's a lot of stuff going on in this movie, and I guess they didn't feel like they had enough time, but you still could have had one fucking scene, like before they took the portrait on the goddamn UFO, they could have had one scene, one motherfucking scene where they talk to each other about how we're glad we're back together, how we shouldn't have been separated, we shouldn't have listened to that mean old Algae Rhythm. But that didn't happen, so that's a mistake. Next, we see Bugs Bunny make fun of MC Hammer, and I'm sure, like, most people didn't even know what that was a reference to. But if you're an old school rap fan, then you knew it was MC Hammer. And I love that the girls laughed at him in the whiteboard. I thought it was a really funny moment, and it makes me laugh every time I watch it. And it also makes me nostalgic. Like, even though it's not the 90s anymore, like this isn't the 90s Space Jam 2, it's still cool that they're referencing the 90s in the sequel to Space Jam because the original Space Jam was so ingrained as part of the 90s culture. So it's like Bugs doing the MC Hammer dance. It's like, it's showing that the 90s is still alive. So it was funny. I liked that. And also kind of mirrors how Daffy was dancing around in the original, kind of. Anyway, now LeBron and Bugs have their famous argument in front of the whiteboard where LeBron is being really bossy to Bugs. He's not letting the Tunes be themselves, so it mirrors the whole thing of LeBron not letting Dom be himself. And so I liked that. And I also really liked that Bugs and LeBron hated each other. Pretty much until like later on in the film, like towards the end and stuff, then they started liking each other and they became friends. And I loved that early on in the film, they had disagreements with one another. They like bickered with one another, and that was awesome. We never, ever got to see that between Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan in the original. They just didn't want to go there. Like, Bugs and Jordan were just so palsy-wowsy with each other in the original, which was cool because Bugs and Jordan relate to one another. They're both the best at what they do. They're both the coolest. It fit their pairing. It was like a natural chemistry. And it was cool, but it still was a little hokey, though, quite honestly. Bugs and Jordan never really had some kind of big disagreement. They had like little disagreements, I guess, in the original, but it was cool that they showed that there was a build-up to the relationship between LeBron and Bugs Bunny. They showed that it was getting there, and like life is a journey, and you're not going to like everyone right away, and it was good. I liked that. So anyway, the timer on the clock goes down, and then we see this giant, digital basketball court emerging out of nowhere. And there's a moment where, and it's quick, so I don't know if you guys caught it, but Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, they both hug each other as they stare before their doom, before they die or whatever. I loved that moment. I loved it. No one gives a fuck and no one talks about it, but it was great to see that despite all their hiccups with one another, Wiley and Roadrunner actually care about each other, and they hug each other for a second because they think they're about to die. Like, despite the fact that Wiley was trying to murder Roadrunner for like decades, they're out in the desert and it's just the two of them for like forever. So it kind of makes sense that they would have a connection with one another. So it was cool to see them hug each other before their doom or their demise. I really liked that. It was like a little quick moment in the movie. And it's like, it makes you think, oh, is this the first time Wiley has touched Roadrunner? Because, in the old cartoons, we never see him touch the Roadrunner because he's never able to get him at all. But actually, there's one old cartoon where he does get to touch the Roadrunner's legs, but nothing really happens because Wiley is tiny in that scene. So it's not the first time they touched each other. But this time was like the first time where they like hugged each other, and it was weird. It was interesting. It was a cool little moment. Anyway, now let's talk about the clock for a second. Get it for a second? All right, anyway. Now, I have mixed feelings about this clock. I thought it was kind of stupid the longer I thought about it that it's even there in the first place. There's quite a bit of plot stuff in this movie that feels like it's rushing. Like the film feels like it's really brisking through a lot of things I already mentioned that would have made the film way better if they took more time with. But they devoted a little too much time to LeBron and Dom's relationship with Al G, right? And we got it, so we didn't need to get it hit with a hammer on our heads. We understood it. So with all this, bearing all this in mind, the fact that the clock is also there makes the film feels like it's rushing even more. And it just kind of bothers me. I should feel like I'm taking my time with this because there's a lot of stuff to enjoy and invest in the characters and the plot of the story. So to have a fucking clock in the air being like, it's time, and I don't know, it's just, I don't know. So Looney Tunes World gets devoured by the digital powers of Algae Rhythm, right? And their whole world gets turned upside down. And it was a cool visual scene, even though it was kind of short. I loved the moment where Speedy rescues Tweety from being hit with the mailbox or whatever. That was a cool moment because they're both the smallest Looney Tunes characters. And you really absolutely never see Tweety and Speedy do anything together. I mean, I can't even remember a time where Speedy Gonzales and Tweety Bird actually even talked to one another. Maybe they have, but it was just a cool little moment. Get it? A little moment? Okay. So anyway, Algae Rhythm shows up, of course, wearing like this workout outfit, this glitterly workout outfit of his, and that's an outfit I liked seeing him in. That was kind of charming. It's way better than his stupid silver jacket from earlier. Now, I would argue that this is a controversial scene that either takes you completely away from the film, depending on how cynical you are, or you just think it's kind of cool. The Looney Tunes get turned into 3D. I actually like the way they look. It seems like they took a lot of time to make sure they looked pretty cool looking. I don't know. I do prefer them being 2D, of course, and I mean, it would have been cool if they were still 2D throughout the whole movie, but still, throughout a really big portion of the movie, we do get to see the Looney Tunes in 2D, like their classic original designs. So it's like half the movie we get to see them in 3D, and the other half it's in 2D. So it kind of evens out, in my opinion. Pretty much, it's even. Now, what's significant is a moment where Al G says, "I think you can all use an upgrade." And Bugs is like, "Upgrade? What are you talking about?" That was awesome. Why? Because it confirms what I was saying earlier about how Al G feels about the tunes. He feels that they are outdated. Old 2D animation? That ain't popular anymore. No one gives a fuck about that. You tunes need an quote-unquote upgrade. What's cool is that for all the people that don't like the fact that the Looney Tunes are in 3D, the film expresses that because the tunes don't like the fact that they're turning into 3D. They feel like it's not really them or how they're supposed to look. And that's cool. It's a challenge for the Looney Tunes to face. Again, like I said earlier, this film amps up all the stakes for the Looney Tunes, even more than in the original Space Jam, believe it or not. I do think the tunes still look good in 3D, but I have to admit there are moments where they're a little wonky looking. But it's kind of a little wonky looking, kind of like how old 90s video game graphics were charming. So it's okay. Now, I read some critic for this fucking movie that complained about them being 3D in the movie and said something like, "Oh, when Bugs Bunny turns 3D, he looks like a stuffed animal you'd buy at the airport." And it's like, yeah... So, there's Bugs Bunny stuffed animals before they were 3D anyway. This just seems like the dumbest line you could say in reviewing the movie. I get it. Maybe they wanted to make the tunes look fluffier to market it, for appealing to children. Having them look a little like that in 3D for, the kids, the kiddies. So, they still look like the Looney Tunes. They still act the same. They're still cool. So fucking what? I mean, having them in 3D doesn't ruin the Looney Tunes. The film is not promoting this idea that the Looney Tunes are supposed to be 3D. Al G, the villain, turns them 3D against their will. So the way it's done is, it's clever, like the Looney Tunes themselves.